Okay, welcome back to Carp Rigs Made Simple. This is the channel, guys, that will take you through a step-by-step guide to all of the common carp rigs used today. All of those rigs that you thought may be too complex to tackle, you'll be fully proficient at tying at the end of these tutorials. So please make sure you subscribe. It's really important. Really helps the channel along. We're making videos all of the time, loads of fantastic rigs coming up, and you'll get those as soon as they arrive if you press the bell icon as well. Okay, we're going to do the Ronnie Rig today, everybody's favourite at the moment. Let's show you how to tie it. Okay, the Ronnie Rig is a low-lying pop-up rig. It's really important that you learn why you're using rigs and you apply them in the right circumstance. Now, I've had hundreds and hundreds of fish on this rig, up to over 60 pound abroad even, but there's specific reasons that I use this rig. Firstly, you get to change the hook very quickly, but there are a number of rigs that can do that. Multi-rig, for example, springs to mind. So it's not the only reason to use it. Secondly, probably most important for me, it allows me to present a pop-up very low on the bottom. But again, the multi-rig can do that also, set up correctly. But thirdly, great for anti-tangle properties. And fantastic for sitting over sort of low-lying chod, used in conjunction with a helicopter rig. You can take it practically anywhere. Anyway, I always start off life with a curved shanked hook. Personal preference, you can use like a wide gape type pattern. For me, whenever I'm using any type of pop-up rig that hangs as the Ronnie Rig does, I prefer the curved shank pattern. Okay, so as I said, I have a size 5 curved shank here, and this is how the Ronnie Rig starts life. So what we're going to build is the hook sort of section, and then we'll add the boom later on. But simply start off with a, in this case, size 5 curved shank hook. So what we then do is, obviously the Ronnie Rig has a piece of shrink tube, which holds the little swivel that we're going to introduce later on in the end. So what we need is a piece of shrink tube. Now this is the 2.4 shrink tube, and what I've done, I've sort of played around with the lengths over time, and for me it's 1.5 centimeters of the 2.4 tubing. So very important. As I said, I've tried various different lengths, but 1.5 centimeters seems to work out perfectly for me. What we also require is a little swivel with a lot of people use the ones that sort of close in and they open them out. I don't like that. I think it just sort of weakens the sort of structure itself. So I like these particular ones. These have got the little sort of open gape there, so we don't have to do anything with it, don't have to play with the integrity of the swivel, and that will hook nicely onto the eye, and then we pull the shrink tube over the top. Okay, so if we start off with our curved shank, and what I'm going to do is place this 1.5 mil sleeve of shrink tube right onto the shank of the hook. Okay, so I've done nothing other than just place that onto the sliding up and down on the shank of the hook. What we then will do is with our little sort of open ring swivel here, like quick link swivel, I'm just going to pull that now onto the eye of this size 5, like so. Okay, and what I'm then going to do is quite simply slide this little piece of shrink tube down over that quick link swivel. I'm going to keep sliding it down and I'm going to push it right down over the barrel of that little quick link swivel, as you can see there. Yeah, so I've pushed it right down over the barrel. Now, as with the hinged stiff rig, it's vitally important that you buy quality here, because this rig is all about movement. And again, like the hinged stiff rig, that this rig turns, so wherever it's touched it will turn into the fish's lip. So it's vitally important that you buy quality here, and there's lots and lots of free movement in this swivel. If there's any sort of restriction at all in the movement of that swivel, then you need to get rid of it and start again. Vitally important. If you're going to spend your money somewhere, spend it on that. So to complete step one, guys, all we're going to do now is we're going to take this over the steam, and I'm just going to hold it over the steam with a pair of pliers and steam that shrink tube in place. So making sure it's not moving on the swivel, steam it in place, and then we retain this beautiful angle, which is key to this rig, really. So let's go do that now. Okay, now we've got that beautifully shrunken down. You can see it's taken on all of the contours of the swivel, and it's held that hook beautifully in place there, and we've retained that lovely curve, so that hook will hang, set there like a claw. What we're just going to do is now finish off that section, and we're just going to use a, as I've shown you in other rigs, I prefer the bait screw. You can of course use just the little micro hook ring swivel. Some people prefer that. I prefer the bait screw. Never ever let me down. Far more convenient. And what we're going to do is we're going to slide that onto the hook, as so. Okay, so that's just hanging on the hook. Yeah. And the shrink tube naturally acts as a buffer at the other end and stops it going any further. And in order to stop it coming back off of the hook, what we're going to do is introduce one of these tiny little stop beads. I don't know if you can see that there. Got a little flat face to it, and we push that onto the hook flat face first, through the little hole. Just be careful with this, do it neatly, just edge it on, make sure it doesn't come out the side of the little stopper, make sure it goes all the way through centrally. Just, I haven't got much nails, but make sure you just sort of slide that on with your nail. And I like to have it so that it's just stopping this this bait screw just opposite the barb. Again, some people like it right at the top. Here for me, I like it just sitting just opposite the barb. And there you go, there's your hook link section completed. Okay, so now we come down to the simple sort of bit of adding a hook link section, the boom. There's lots and lots of media around using the sort of quarter boom type material, which is a very stiff boom, which sort of kicks the rig away. Absolutely, certainly use that if it's a nice clean bottom, but if there's any kind of sort of chod, etc., you may want to start thinking about which material is best to use in those situations. So as with the hinge stiff, you'll go from anything from a sort of a soft coated braid and a really choddy sort of weedy type scenario, to little bits of chod. You might use a sort of a softer material, maybe like this, the sort of 15-pound Cam H2O here from Rigmarole, which just allows you to sit over little bits of chod and twigs, etc. Or you might go for the very stiff boom material when you're on a nice clean bottom. But just for this demonstration, we're going to use the 15-pound Cam H2O, which is my sort of go-to. in the lakes that I fish, because they do have a bit of chod, a bit of weed about, and I'll fish them on a helicopter rig, and that's a pretty safe bet. So again, I like my finish rig to be around about 7 inches. I do fish these up to sort of around about 14 inches in France for much bigger fish. So have a look at a video online called Big Booms Big Fish, and that'll explain all of the theory behind that. But for this, I'm going to pull off around about 12 inches, which is generally about right for a 7-inch section. I'm going to snip that off, take that away, and I'm going to bring in my newly tied hook section. Okay, you can obviously crimp this here, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to tie it. And what I'm going to do is create a little loop at the end, because once again, as with my hinge stiff, I like a lot of flexibility, a lot of movement in the rig. I think that's the whole purpose of the rig. There's lots and lots of free movement. So what I'm going to do is take the end of my Cam H2O here and place it through the large loop, and I'm just going to form what is an overhand loop, as if you was just going to tie a nice overhand loop. Now again, give yourself plenty of material here, don't go shy with this, because you're trying to create a loop here, and you don't want to sort of leave yourself short. So as you would, just do the overhand loop. Just very simply just create an overhand loop, as we do with that particular knot. And then what we're going to do against that turn, instead of just coming up back through as we would with a normal overhand loop, I'm going to grab hold of this loop that I've created, and I'm just going to twist it 180 degrees once, and then I'm going to come through with my main section and my tag end. And what I've done here, you can see, is created a figure of 8, and that's called a figure of 8 knot. And the reason that we use that is because it beautifully centers the exit of the main line out of the loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my puller tool here to pull this tight. And what I do is, because I want to maintain the integrity of this loop, I use the fat of my puller tool. So I won't just hook it there and pull it through, because it makes it quite thin. I'm actually going to slide it right up onto the fat of the body, and I'm going to pull that knot tight, give that a good old pull, and then also with my teeth tag in quickly. Yeah, so I'm going to give that a nice pull, and when I take this off, you see I've created a beautiful loop, and look how central that exit is. Yeah, it's not kicking off to the side like you would with an overhand knot. So when I trim off that little bit of excess tag that we've created, I can show you better. I've created a beautifully central knot and a beautifully central loop. Yeah, so there's loads and loads of movement here, which is exactly what we want. Okay, now I've got to do the other end. So as always, I will place a rigmarole rig sleeve on the other end, which I'm not great at doing because my eyesight is pretty poor. There we go. That's quite good for me. And what I would do is, once again, make sure I measure this out correctly. Okay, so I'm going to introduce, as always, my little rig safe with my measuring tool on it, and I'm going to place the bottom of the hook onto the 0. I'm going to pull this up so that the point of the sleeve is on the 7, and hold that in place. And what I do is I hold the rig sleeve, grab the material behind the rig sleeve, slide the rig sleeve out the way, and at that point, once we get this rig safe out the way, is where I'm just going to create my little overhand loop. Now this one I don't need to worry too much about, because as I said, it's going to sit underneath the rig sleeve, so I just do a normal overhand loop, pull that through, give it a little pull with my puller tool, pull the tag, snip the tag off, and now we have our rig. So what I'm going to do is, as always, pull this rig sleeve right up to the loop. I'm just going to pull that loop inside the rig sleeve so just a little bit of it protrudes. That would allow me to put my puller tool on one end. The other end I'm going to do exactly the same as I did before. I'm going to slide the fat of the puller tool through the loop so it maintains the integrity of that loop at all times. I'm going to give that a good pull. There you go, and as I said, this cam H2O always stretches beautifully straight. So now, once I release the puller tools, slide that carefully off, I now have a beautifully straight rig. And a lovely Ronnie rig on the top. And that, my friends, is as simple as it gets. How to tie the Ronnie rig. Give it a go.